Hello, everybody. How are we doing? We are live. This might be the lowest audience we ever get, or maybe people come for perspective and cope. And
Yeah, well, and recap, there's a lot to take stock of,
there is a lot to take stock of. This isn't going to be the actual season review, but there's certainly things happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm.
Did we send the tweet out yet?
Oh yeah, I'm sending the tweet
Okay.
out.
All
Yeah,
right, all right, all right.
I'm a big tweet man.
All right, tweet
No
boy.
Ty tonight. He's scared to compete. He's doing better things. Griff, how are you coping with this loss?
I'm coping all right because, the loss sucks. I didn't think it would be this bad, especially the way it got out of
Well,
hand quickly.
Griff, that's kind of the podcast. This is the
Oh,
preamble.
okay. So let me preamble.
Do you
Right.
have like a fun thing planned afterwards?
Oh, how am I coping that way?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm gonna go pick up some Tomka. I'm gonna go pick up some Thai food. Gonna get
Ooh.
four star Tomka. I'll be regretting it in the morning. You know what they say? Woe is the commode when Sunday dawn breaks after the morning after Thai food.
Wow, you have had coffee.
Me?
Caffeinated?
Yeah. This is just how I am, man.
Oh, the Jags doing bad, David. I didn't honestly football. It's cool that football's being played right now, but I wasn't quite ready for that, so I haven't really.
Or
I saw some run past option thing cause like coaching Twitter to melt down,
that's great.
but
Um, I don't
the
know.
Jags are bad.
I like watching football, because we have no stakes now. So I'm reminding myself, oh yeah, I actually like this sport.
Right.
Um,
Right, it's
you
okay.
know,
It doesn't.
yeah,
This doesn't matter. So,
yeah, yeah.
unless like I would like the 49ers not to win, but other than that, the Chargers have 4 interceptions.
Right tonight.
Apparently so. Asante Samuel
Oh
with
my
3 of them.
God.
Well, that sounds like my sort of football. Actually, I like a bit of offensive struggles because I'm sick.
Yeah, no, it's hilarious because look, we all know Sean Payton wants to be the head coach of the Chargers and coaching Herbert,
Mm.
but that can only happen if Staley gets fired, and
Which
that's not happening now.
he's a
Unless he
defensive
gets
genius again.
right, right. Unless he gets blown out next week. But um
Yeah, no, they'll probably keep it respectable.
right.
Wow. Okay, so Griff, I'm having. I had to cope. I had a digestive biscuit.
Yeah, what the fuck is a digestive biscuit?
Well, it's not
Is
very
that something
good.
did you just make that up?
No, it's not very good either.
Is it let me hazard a guess. Is it like a biscuit with a laxative in there? Like in the baking mix?
Well, no, but I do think it's one of those like things which is like sugary, but supposedly back in the day had health benefits which don't exist. I mean,
Right.
it's made of there's got to be some fiber in there.
Right. Like from the same era when they were saying cigarettes helps soothe a sore throat or something, like in the 30s and 40s and 50s.
Yeah, I mean, not quite like that, but I think they're
So
Scottish. But it's like made of
now
wheat and sugar, basically. It's
just
pretty ordinary biscuit. It's not great. If you
so
put
it's just a
chocolate on it,
regular
which
biscuit.
does exist, is much better.
I see. So wait, I feel like it's along the same lines of when you've been having problems and kind of conventional wisdom says eat something bland.
You know
Just
what?
settle your stomach.
Probably.
I feel like that's along the same lines, but we don't have branding where it says digestive biscuit. This will make you
Mm.
feel better. We
Well,
don't have that.
it's quite popular for people to dunk it in their cups of tea.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure.
It's a bit of a dunker, you know.
Yeah, I dunk it for
But I
sure.
drink a lot of coffee, and you can't be dunking in coffee, you know.
Why not? Well,
Oh my
is it?
god, is that how
Is
the brand became a thing?
well, hold
Are
on.
they
I just have a
dunking the
question.
donut?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
That's
you're right.
mental. That's so
Damn, I didn't think about that.
American.
Yeah, but hold up though.
Okay.
What's the difference in dunking a digestive biscuit into your cup of Joe compared to like putting like Biscoff in there or
Yeah, well, that's sick, and I don't understand. Have on your side of the
don't people
pond
do that?
has Biscoff become a massive thing? Has the Biscoff
It's
mafia
assumed that
taken
it's
over?
not really. It's assumed it's a Canadian thing and a British thing,
Oh
isn't it?
right, no, never. Well, digestives kind of taste like less sugary, almondy Biscoff, I guess. But like
There you go.
Biscoff on the continent is big. Like they'd serve a little Biscoff biscuit with an espresso,
Sure.
but over here it suddenly became a massive thing, and one of the big Biscoff brands took over, and it's like in everything. Like they put it in
Oh, word.
donuts and in cake,
That's
and it just ruins things.
that's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
capitalism. Um, right. And
it'd be like
it's
how sriracha became a massive thing here, and
right. I mean,
yeah.
sriracha's great, but like it
Yeah,
definitely
no
became a.
doubt, no doubt. I prefer
But,
sriracha to Biscoff. I'd rather have sriracha in
right.
my cake than Biscoff.
But I mean, like people are putting sriracha on their Cheerios now. Like it's a
They
little
are
overdone.
those people.
Um, right, right. It's shoot, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something of high value and importance, and then it went in
Mm,
it floated away. Um,
as can happen.
right, right. Shoot. How are you?
I'm okay. Should we do the podcast?
How's the weather over there?
Oh, it's dreadful, dreadful, mate.
Yeah. Did you
You
do
know,
anything today?
wet. We saw some friends.
Nice.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
right. Then
Yeah.
then the football happened. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I applied for a new
Yeah.
passport. Just
Oh,
really
nice.
exciting things. Yeah,
Very good.
yeah.
Very good. That'll do it. Yeah. It's a fun-filled Saturday.
Mm. How about you, man? Did you go to Costco?
Oh yeah. No, it's just I was just working on some things.
Some things.
Um yeah, no, we don't have to talk about it. It's okay.
Okay.
Okay, I was building a shed in my backyard, I guess, if you must know.
Whoa,
Jeez.
man! That's a real alpha a-
Um
adventure.
but we don't have to talk about it. It's fine. We don't have
Okay.
to talk about it.
Is it not built?
Maddie, we'll shelve that one and we'll talk about it later.
Okay. Yeah, put that on the shelf of the shed that you're gonna
Okay,
build.
fine. So yeah, so I've started it and I have to do the foundation and
Mm-hmm.
like level it all out and stuff. And that takes a long time. So I haven't actually started building anything. But we're off to a great start and we're competing.
Nice.
Yeah. It helps that my brother's a contractor because I don't know what I'm doing, but he's been very helpful.
So like the first half of the first half of this game today.
Right. That's a great segue.
It is right. Let's do the
As-
podcast.
okay.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where sadly the Seahawks season has ended. They have been knocked out of the playoffs at the first time of trying, 41-23 by the San Francisco 49ers. That scoreline tells some of the story, but not all of it. The Seahawks actually led this game 17-16 in the first half, at the end of the first half, after Jason Myers made a 56-yard field goal thanks to a silly hit from Ward on Geno Smith sliding. But then they sort of capitulated in the second half for a variety of reasons, some of which we will explore today. But Griff, what's your mood like right now?
I mean, I really didn't want the game to get out of hand. I was emotionally, mentally prepared for a loss. I think most of us were, but I
I mean, they're a
definitely
10-point
thought,
underdog.
right, right. And I really thought like the way the first half went, even with what felt like a per play disparity, a 1 point, difference going to going into halftime. I definitely felt like that was a little even plausible scenario. I really didn't think it would get away from them the way that it did. Defensively, it's really a story of just like explosive plays. And I kind of take some solace from the fact that the explosive plays occurred on your Many of them occurred on your best players that were out there, because I feel like that's something that isn't likely to repeat. And like, while for this game they were problems there, you're not going to go replace Tariq Woolen. Like, there's nothing to do to address that. You just, Tariq Woolen advances along his development curve, and that's it, right? Like, you don't say anything else, right? So like that sort of thing. Like Ryan Neal, he gave up a lot of plays today, but he was probably not 100%. He didn't play for three weeks. Probably shouldn't have played today, and he's intended to be your third safety, a really key, important role player. Don't get me wrong, but like, that's just okay. Like, I can stomach that. The run defense is something that really just baffles me still, though. And that's a big picture conversation that we'll get into. But on the flip side, offense, I mean, I was really encouraged by like Geno kind of ending the interception. I don't think that was really on him. The fumble, he's got to secure the ball even under duress. But it was really good to see what I thought was like a really high-end Geno game to end the season after that dip, right? That occurred, a statistical dip anyway, and some legitimately bad Geno games in there. But then also to do it against the top 3 defense in the league, like okay, that's a good way to end the season if you're going to end it, at least offensively. And the run blocking was competent, against a really good front. So like, I'm not declaring moral victories, but if you're gonna get blown out to end your season, then I would like to look for something to be positive. So that's what I look to.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, let's focus on the defense first. That looked like a promising first half performance, really. Like, it was somewhat bend, don't break. There was positives for sure. You could see how it's working. Brock Purdy looked rattled. Like, he didn't look like he belonged in a playoff game. And yet, by the end of the game, he finishes with 332 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. There were some advanced metrics which came out after the game as well, where Purdy threw into tight coverage a yard of separation or fewer on just 2 attempts of his 30 attempts. And he had a completion percentage over expectation of plus 0.3%, which means that guys were wide open. To that point, Deebo Samuel, per next gen stats, gained 131 of his 133 receiving yards on in-breaking routes. So Shanahan just crossed the Seahawks to death. That included 4 receptions for 120 yards and a touchdown on crossing routes. From Deebo. So it was just a mess. A mess. And I feel like I'm interested in the tape, right? And I'm interested in the tape, but in the first half, it felt like the 49ers came out and passed quite a bit. Like, they had 19 pass attempts in the first half in a neutral game. And there were certain series where it's like all pass. But then in the second half, and this is all anecdotal, I should back it up with data. I need to watch tape. Second half, I felt they were more balanced. Seattle couldn't stop the run. They kind of had to give up more to stop the run. And Pete, in his post-game press conference, Pete Carroll, he said they were geared up to stop the run, and that sort of left them in some situations where crossing routes, they just couldn't handle it off the play action. They were caught in that they didn't play it well in zone. Obviously, Woolen had his worst game, as he said, and you wonder how much his sprained ankle was affecting it. But I don't know. Am I off base feeling that, or?
No, I agree, and it's odd, right? Because last week, granted, they played the Rams, right. horrible team, but I mean, like, a lot of those plays that Shanahan ran this week or this game doesn't always rely on the receiver and the quarterback. It's scheme, it's attacking structure. The Sean McVay can scheme that stuff up too, and Seattle bottled all of it up last week. Like, just, I don't care if it's peak Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp. No one's open because they're recognizing the routes the same way in 2020 when Cooper Kupp was out there. Cooper Kupp wasn't open in a lot of those matchups either on those boot opportunities. So the fact that they're saying they're gearing up for the run, that to me, that means within those calls, they're not asking the linebackers to robot, as we say, like find those crossing routes. Mm-hmm. They're having them play aggressive, even if it's cover 3 zone, right? But then having Woolen travel across the field on some of those, and he's just losing it. And I think the issue there, Matt, you can speak more to this, is not feeling the break right, because he needs to know what route on the route tree is defending, and it's more of an eyes thing, an anticipation thing. Because I mean, he's as fast as you can be. He has the best recovery speed in the NFL, probably.
And
So
Griff, he did get a bit out of shape against the Rams a bit on certain route stems. Like, I think as the season's gone on, his sort of lack of exposure, the fact it's been year one in the NFL, like in a defeat, it's always easy to overreact, as almost throw whatever I'm holding in my hand over the
right,
room because I'm gesturing my hands. No, but it is easy to overreact to like a one game thing. But I think with Woolen and sort of over exaggerate stuff you'd seen, but with Woolen there was elements to his game where it's like, okay, he's inexperienced here. It's starting to show up, and I think Shanahan went at him at this game. I think with the amount of man coverage that Seattle was playing in like big downs, and also just to try and get guys going at the ball, Shanahan sort of noticed that and adjusted really, really well. I felt also, it's just a talent thing. Like the Rams' offensive line's banged up, their receivers are missing. They're massively depleted.
right,
Whereas when you get to the 49ers, they have talent in every single area. Their offensive line's great, especially at blocking the run and run action stuff. And I think Seattle just got exposed in that sense too. Now, we do have a very kind donation from David Crockett saying, and who's been big supporter of the podcast and also our work, Griff. He asked, is it the design of the defense to have a lot of 1v1 tackle opportunities? If so, why? No. I mean, that's not as simple as a yes/no answer. But what I think you can sort of flip it on its head and say that Shanahan is so damn good at getting one-on-one opportunities. Now, if Seattle's playing a lot of man coverage, as I felt they did in this game, to try and stop the run, and also because Brock Purdy at the start looked awful against it in the passing down situations. Like one
right.
rat, he was like almost threw 2 picks to the low hole defender. But yeah, I feel Shanahan then just got into situations where he could force the one-on-one opportunities and with the leverage advantage for the receiver. But we can
Right.
get to Seattle's tackling too. Griff, do you agree?
Right. I agree, but I think where David's question like really applies though is at least for this year compared to last year is like the differences in how they coach cover 3 now. Now that you're matching both seams, it's the same principle as man coverage. You have more one-on-one opportunities. It's helped them in a lot of areas, but when you do lose and you surrender a completion over the middle and you miss the tackle, or you don't have anyone else to leverage to the way that they used to coach it. If someone popped over at the intermediate, there would be guys spaced to rally on that ball. The difference, though, is that they gave up fewer targets at the intermediate last year at the expense of the check down. This year, they defend the check down equally as bad, but they just have less check down targets because they have more intermediate targets and they're defending those intermediate targets at a better rate basis. It's just that when you don't defend them well, they hit harder on average. So I think, David, I don't know, maybe that answers your question. I don't think it's designed to say, well, we want one-on-one tackle opportunities, but it's just that's like a coincidental, byproduct of it. And it obviously it hurt them this game.
And a lot of defenses make one-on-one tackle opportunities. Now, the other thing is that Seattle's tackling this game was atrocious, and that sort of then you're like, well, why is that guy one-on-one? If the miss obviously accentuates the nature of the tackle. Pete Carroll mentioned after the one of the games where there was bad tackling early in the season, he mentioned that he was up all night thinking about rugby tackling, and that in the offseason they need to go and play some rugby again, which is obviously funny or sadly ironic because Seattle back in 2012 wrote the book on the heads up USA football tackling. They were a big part of that implementation, which is taught to high school coaches as a way to tackle safely with your head up, shoulder tackling, head out of the game tackling, and called it stuff like the hawk tackle and stuff like that. But I'm certified in that course to coach football in the UK, so they had a big influence on that, and their tackling did used to be very good. And it seems this year, I think maybe there was this focus on the punch tackle where they were trying to get the ball out with the second tackler coming in, And I think maybe that's come at the expense of pursuit and tracking the hip. Anyway, they've got a big issue to fix, but Pete Carroll knows it was an issue. It's just sad that it regressed so badly today.
Right. And to speak of like, the cost benefit trade-off, right? Like the forced fumbles dried up. Now those are fluky anyway, and maybe it's folly to try to actually coach turnovers, because I feel like it's just something that follows from good defense in general and taking advantage of opportunities.
Definitely.
But it's the fumbles dried up, so maybe Pete's thinking, yeah, we need to revert back to just stressing fundamentals over everything.
And John Carey asked Matty, if Jordan Brooks is healthy, does he mitigate some of the crosses? Yeah, and that's a big thing. Like ultimately, there's a feel to this game that the defense after that first half, not only did they have issues that they had this season, not only did Shanahan call just like an unbelievable game, but also the talent disparity. Like injuries happen in football. The 49ers, heck, they've had a hell of a lot of injuries. They're still playing well, but they're healthy on offense pretty much. Whereas Seattle's missing their two big players. They're missing Jordan Brooks, as you mentioned, John. And yeah, he'd help looking for the crosses. He's one of the best robotters in football, where you read run or pass, off play action. So you come up to play a run, you realize it's play action, then you turn and locate the kind of crossing or race routes and man turn with it and chase it down the field, and carry it, match it down the field. And he was great at that, Brooks. And obviously he wasn't there today. He's done for the season with his knee injury. And obviously they're also missing Jamal Adams, who would have been a big part of the defense. That's what happens in football. But yeah, that obviously would have helped. They didn't have those guys. And I think, yeah, I've said it, but the talent disparity is obvious. Just to put it in, more statistical sort of outlining of how bad this was for the defense. The 49ers scored on 8 of their 9 non-garbage offensive possessions. 4 touchdowns, 4 field goals. They had 505 yards of offense, the most they've had in a game in the last 3 seasons. This is per Shil Kapadia of the Ringer now. Obviously, he used to be a beat writer covering the Seahawks. Seattle's defense and it was really that second half where it just started falling apart. I don't really. I need to rewatch it. I'm sort of lost at where it's hard to when so many things are going wrong. Like it's hard to identify an area. Help me, Griff.
No, I agree with you. It was a disaster day on defense. So I think that they had worse strong safety play this week than they had the last month. So like even controlling for opponent, and we already talked about we already talked about Ryan Neal not being 100%, but like maybe Abrams should have started. Tariq Woolen had the worst game of his young career.
Well, we didn't talk about Neal on air, Griff. So yeah, go into that.
Oh. Well, right. I mean, he probably shouldn't have played. He was, out for 3 weeks. He didn't seem like 100%. Abrams has been actually playing pretty good football, in the same scenarios that Neal found himself in, like especially surprisingly, not because I have any preconceived notion of him, but a guy that's coming off the street playing like rule assignment correct football. Like last week he put on the clinic defending the second level against play action. And that's really hard to do. That's a premium skill. And Abrams was performing better than I thought anyone could coming in for, being a depth player and all that stuff. So, and then you don't have Jordan Brooks, and that hurts. It limits what you can do in coverage. Cody Barton probably could have been activated more in coverage if he was playing Will, if they had Brooks in at Mike. Now, again, I'm saying that without watching the tape, but there's these downstream effects. You can see how like they need another playmaker opposite Uchenna Nwosu, a 3-down playmaker. I still like Taylor a lot on passing downs. Hopefully he can become a 3-down player again, like he was last year and was doing all right, but they need another guy like that. Up front on the interior, it's like the 49ers offensive line is playing way better this year than they did last year. And I think it was just maybe continuity, but like last year, I think that matchup was fairly even talent-wise and execution-wise up front in the line of scrimmage. And the guys are either the same up front in the middle, or they've replaced a 275 pounder with a 300 pounder, Shelby Harris, who not only is more of a 3-4 defensive end, which is really a 3 technique for all intents and purposes, he also comes from the same scheme, being coached under Vic Fangio. So there's just, it doesn't make sense to me. Now, of course, the commentary there is that they're not playing that much 3-4. And when they do play 3-4, I think it's regressed because they don't drill it as often as they did last year. But, it's easy to overreact, like you were saying, easy to overreact to the results of this game. It can't override all the games that happened before it. In the manner in which they happen, because the manner in which they happen dictates how the coaching staff and front office should go about the changes they need to make. They don't just react to this game. So, I mean, there's caveats to everything. So I don't know. Beyond that, it just requires, watching the game back and trying to be level-headed about it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I feel like the other thing which changed was, well, I guess it didn't change, but within the other big plays hitting, Brock Purdy started really sort of improvising when the play broke down to a positive effect for the 49ers. Like Elijah Mitchell's touchdown catch to put the 49ers up 29-17. And then they obviously went for 2, made it 31-17. But that catch in the flat was Purdy escaping and obviously no one covering Mitchell because it's a broken play. Like, those things matter too. So it's sort of the worst possible thing to happen to the defense in the second half, which, yeah, that's not great. I don't know. I'm interested to see the tape. I feel like we're going to have similar gripes to other poor run defense performances. Yeah, they can add pieces. Right. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, what happens in the end of season pressers as well. Like, Clint Hurt is Pete Carroll's guy. Obviously, he appointed him, but also, that he's been with Pete for a while. He's a young coach. It's his first year play calling. I don't think firing him would achieve anything really, because you've invested so much time and energy. That being said, they've run like 3 different defenses this year. This is like the most basic defense I've seen under Pete Carroll right now, and I feel that's a big factor in what we saw today, where Shanahan sort of knew, there was no added layer to combat what Shanahan was doing. And in past years, like 2021, they had quite a bit of schematic complexity. Whereas this year, I guess maybe because it's year 1 of a new system, but this ain't the system they thought they'd be running. Like the thing they ended in is like 2012 to 2019 Seattle, as you said, and it was it was more vanilla than that. They had like 1 or 2 calls for each thing that offense can pose.
Yeah.
Not much wrinkles or.
And the reason, because it's like they were schematically retreating into, making the numbers work. And because they didn't start the year in camp this way, they didn't have all the necessary extra stuff now, but they still don't want to be this. This is a reaction. So to me, I think the fundamental question of this year is they were contrary to, phrasing that gets, that endures. They were a 3-4 team in 2021 and 2020. That change occurred 2 years ago. They played less 3-4 this year in favor of the 2-4-5 nickel front, which is essentially looks like 4 guys on the line of scrimmage. You got 2 tackles with their hand to their dirt, and then 2 outside linebackers, but it's an over front, a 4-man over front, even not a 5-man over front. They're playing nickel, and they're playing that against under center on 1st and 10. I mean, they're really only to 11 personnel, but still last year they were playing 3-4 bear to 11 personnel, even nickel or base, often nickel though. And they really, went away from that package. They had it, but they were running progressively less of it as the season went on, and they insisted on this 2-4-5 front. And because it was so atrocious against the run, they had to then load the box up in it And essentially, they just played cover 3 sky all year long. And that took them out of the coverage shells they wanted. It took them out of the way they layered calls together. And so the response was just to load the box, as opposed to let's get back into bear and get all the supplementary calls in, like the fire zones and weaving in and out of coverages. But the problem was, I think, because they invested so much in the 2-4-5, that made the 3-4 stuff, the bear stuff, less flexible and had less time invested in it. So that wasn't something they could retreat into. So they didn't have anything to fall into to solve all the problems that they would need to. The only thing that they could do was, we spent too much time in the 2-4-5. We need to drop the safety down. And they hamstrung themselves. I mean, they tied themselves in a knot, basically. And at times they played really good defense at times in that. So like, that's encouraging, because you're undermanned, not everyone's healthy, they can show that they have a heartbeat. But there's no way Pete Carroll says, okay, we're going to go run Brooklyn and Phoenix and tank fronts next year. That's his old language for this kind of thing. There's just no way. Clint Hurt doesn't want to do that. Sean Desai and Carl Scott, assuming they're still on the team, they don't want to do that. That's not their world.
That's not why they were hired.
Right. That's not the point. Otherwise, bring back Ken Norton Jr. or whoever. I mean, they shouldn't have fired him anyway, but I digress. But so it's really like, I hope someone asks Pete about why they played with the fronts the way that they did, and why they continued when it didn't seem like it was working, and the downstream effect it had. And then really, like, how do they open next year? Like, what are they philosophically next year? So
yeah,
I don't know. And we'll get into this stuff with our more in-depth season review and all that, and off-season preview and all that. But
yeah, it's an interesting. They've sort of learned a lot this year, but then learned nothing. Yes, but that is for the future. So the big moment in the game, really, which will be identified, is start of the second half. Seattle, as I said, was up 17-16. The 49ers put together a 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. A 13-play touchdown drive with 2 explosive plays on the drive, and go up 23-17. Seattle then responds with a real nice mix on offensive, like shotgun after being heavily sort of under center and moving the ball really well in the run game in the first half. And then they spread the 49ers out. We see a bit of up-tempo as well. Geno Smith balls down the field. Seattle gets to 2nd and 9 at the San Francisco 13-yard line. Or 14-yard line, sorry. After a 1-yard run from DJ Dallas. Geno throws it downfield to Tyler Lockett for 7 yards, and it's on a quarterback draw RPO play. It comes back for penalty on Damian Lewis, an ineligible man downfield for 5 yards, and that puts Seattle in a 2nd and 14 situation. Now, just in a vacuum, that penalty is bizarre, because if you pause it as the ball's coming out of Geno's hand, Lewis is at 1 yard. He did a bad job of sort of like not getting depth, but for an official to call that is very, very marginal. Pete Carroll said that they usually are allowed 2 yards of leeway, so it was just a bizarre call to make. And there was actually 2 more of them. The third one, probably Lewis should have been a bit smarter, but the second one was also very weird. So just bad luck, I guess, for Seattle. Just bad officiating, and not to mention that DK Metcalf, he had his best game. We can get onto that, but he beat Ward on a play, and then was tugged back, and there was no flag, which was unfortunate. Anyway, I digress. What happened afterwards? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I like the sentiment of letting them play, but then I didn't like Colby Parkinson's holding call preceding it. It's like, either let them play or don't.
Yeah, I feel Seattle didn't get the officiating luck today. Yeah. Anyway, so then 2nd and 14, they try a deep shot to Metcalf. Then they get in a 3rd and 14, and the big moment happens where at the San Francisco 19-yard line, Geno Smith is sacked by Charles Omenihu and fumbled the football, which was recovered by Nick Bosa. Seattle's down by 6. The 49ers have the ball, and they march down the field.
The reason why that penalty was so costly was, I mean, besides the fact that it sets up, its penalties are bad, right? You lose yards, but they really desperately needed to stay out of third and long situations and second and long situations against that front. And sure enough, it lets Menahu fly upfield on a deep pocket on a deep drop. And I think Gino did a good job stepping up through that, keeping his eyes downfield, but then didn't secure the ball. I mean, that was a crazy play by
He had 2
Menahu.
hands on the ball. You could say it needed to be higher, like he was carrying it kind of low, but he was trying to move up. Like, yeah, just a great play. Gino said he saw it.
Yeah, unfortunate. So that's really why they couldn't, they couldn't sustain those types of things. And then at that point, it definitely felt like the game just got out of hand for them. And, the butterfly effect and all that, you never know if you get a touchdown there, what the vibes are like on the sideline, how that contributes, but you still have to play the play in front of you. And they definitely didn't.
It's just so weird though. Like the ball was out immediately. And when you pause it, like anyway, just bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was like usual kind of inexperienced playoff teams problems, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. The again, we need to watch the tape. I felt the offense did okay. It was more that the defense just collapsed. Like this 49ers team is a very, very, very talented defense. Like they are absolutely stacked. They're going to cause teams issues throughout these playoffs, however long they end up lasting. I
Very
felt
well
this
coached,
was,
obviously.
really well coached, very talented, like multiple pros. I felt they played okay. It was just the defense just collapsed. We've got a very kind donation here from Frank Darcy. I just wanted to say I have enjoyed your coverage all season. Looking forward to a new year. Thank you. Thank you so much, Frank. We've enjoyed it too, and we're not going to go anywhere, so don't worry about that. Yeah. So we'll have a film podcast out from this. If you're watching, please do like the video, subscribe. We've got loads of people, which one tells me people obviously are enjoying the podcast, but two, this Jaguars game isn't doing very well in terms of closeness. Right. So the big thing which came out of the game was from the press conferences in terms of what happens when guys start talking about the future. Geno Smith said he wants to finish his career in Seattle and he wants to be there. He spoke twice about repaying the organization for the faith that they showed in him in the offseason. And he spoke about loyalty. So it sounds like he would be open to a more amenable contract than, he could realistically get more elsewhere. He could play hard to bargain, obviously, his contract up, but clearly he's open to a more team-friendly deal, which is big. Pete Carroll said, Geno, he's for real. Geno's the real deal. He can do all of the things that a terrific quarterback does. He praised his movement, praised his leadership, praised his poise and calm throughout the season, and said how much of a great story it was, and that he hopes that they can get something done in the offseason. So there's no reason to think Geno's not the quarterback next year and for other years.
Yeah. I think in some of those quotes, that was just Geno being a good soldier. I think he's going to drive a hard bargain, and I hope he gets paid. I do hope, though, that it's like no more than 33 million APY per year. Ideally, like that Tannehill contract makes sense, which, what was that? Was that 30 million per year with friendly structure on that third year or something like that? I feel like that makes sense for both parties. Of course, they could franchise tag him too. Regarding what Pete said, it's really cool that they're both like kissing up to each other publicly to the media, because I mean, usually with the way negotiations work, even if you feel that way behind the scenes, you don't verbalize that to everyone. You don't, broadcast that, because that hurts your leverage.
And at the end of the regular season, they were a bit more cautious than this, which, they didn't know if they were going to be playing in the playoffs or not, but like they were a bit more cautious. Maybe there's already been positive discussions between the two sides, but yeah.
Right. I mean, Pete probably thinks, barring a turnover, we almost just put up 30 points on the best defense in the league. So that's probably thinking like that probably, validates further like the cap or what am I saying? The cherry on top,
Right.
with Geno. How do you think Pete views Geno in the grand scheme of past quarterbacks that he's had?
Well, like, where does he rank him?
Like how do you this is a leading question because I already have a thought in mind.
Oh,
But I don't know. Is he, because I mean Pete, the way Pete talks about guys, Carson Palmer is like on his, like, he's like his, number one guy, because Carson Palmer, he was like touted as highly as Peyton Manning before the injuries in college and all that stuff. But I don't know. I feel like Geno's more like at that Leinart stage in Pete's mind, where you can win championships with Matt Leinart. I mean, USC Matt Leinart, who's a really good college quarterback.
right.
Like not top shelf elite, but you can
Mm-hmm.
do everything you want to do provided you've got the team around him.
So where's Mark Sanchez on this scale?
I feel like Sanchez was, I feel like he's a good notch below Leinart, but still good enough to win on the elite team. But I don't know. I feel like, because at his core, Pete likes West Coast 5-step drop, get the ball out, progress, like, and he likes boots. And that, I think, to him, his mind, that's what Geno is.
We saw the whole thing from Geno, right? We saw the whole package. And Pete said they called like everything on the sheet, and you could see that they tried everything on offense, and honestly, it kind of worked. They needed
schemed, that. Yeah,
they just got too many penalties down the stretch, and
I mean, they schemed into the teeth of the top 3 defense, and they moved the ball.
Which, like, you could say, well, third time trying, and you should hope they would. But also, there's some stuff to take. And Griff, real quick, what John Carey's been very kind and said, really appreciate all the work you guys do. Deeply looking forward to your off-season coverage. Thanks for being the sober voices of the fan base. Thank you, John. That's very kind of you. Appreciate that. We will try to do that. So DK Metcalf,
thank you, John. Appreciate that.
He had a bounce back game, and it looked awesome how there'd been opportunities, I feel, in the past 49ers game, but in other games too, where teams played middle field close coverage, showed a bit of press, and DK didn't get the ball for a variety of reasons. Sometimes he didn't get open. Sometimes Geno wasn't able to get there. Sometimes, the protection broke down. There was a lot of things going on. There wasn't one factor. There wasn't one thing to blame. But this game, DK had a kind of the peak of what he can be for an offense, right? He was nestling down little crosses in the whole of like the way they were playing cover 4. He was he was beating Ward all day, and the Ward was getting away with a lot. DK wasn't really giving it in the same way from what we saw on the broadcast. He can count himself a bit unfortunate there. I felt it was a really, really good performance from Metcalf. He finished with I can't find it.
I think it was 10 receptions, 13 attempts on like 100-something yards.
Thank you. Yeah.
136 yards with a long of 50.
Wow. And 2 touchdowns. Like, wow.
He bottled up the tough catches too.
Oh yeah, that bullet slant on 3rd and 12 or something.
Yeah.
Where he juggled it and then went down to the ground and completed it. He had a big playoff time game.
He dominated within his route tree. Like, that's, it was within himself, and he just played. It was like pristine DK, like what we know DK to be. So that's really great that that was there on a high stakes game. Lockett didn't. I'm curious to see what happened. I'm curious to see how they used Lockett, and then how San Francisco defended him. I wonder if he's not 100% still. I don't know. So
yeah, and unfortunately, like what also hurt the offense, I guess, is the fact that because it just got away from them so much, the Seahawks weren't able to keep running the ball at the rate they had in the first half and stay as balanced as did. Like it sort of fell apart, which they just didn't quite have it today. But it was a good learning moment, I guess, for them. And another shocking thing, Panda Hombre tweeted the podcast asking, What's the record when Pete Carroll wears a grey hoodie? He's got that one with the white stripes on. You are correct, and I'm afraid to tell you that per Ty Dane Gonzalez is Pete Carroll tracker. Griff, what do you think? Do you think Pete Carroll has a good record in grey hoodies or a bad record?
I'm gonna go good record.
You think?
Yeah.
He's 1-6 now.
Oh
So
shit.
the grey hoodie is a problem.
Gray hoodie's a problem. Apparently, white on gray is a problem too. They're 3-9 in that now. Although I don't believe in that stuff.
You don't? It's quite scientific.
I only believe in blocking and tackling.
Right, getting off the rock.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I wonder if
so interesting.
I wonder if it's a mental thing. I mean, look good, feel good, play good, coach good, right?
Yeah,
Podcast good.
there's got to be some body language thing about Gray exuding, not being involved and being Gray.
Curious, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, well. Any questions? We had some good questions earlier. Not that we haven't had good questions now.
We should talk about Ken Walker a little bit.
Okay, sure. Because the run-in Griff was very, very good. Like he only finished 4.2 yards per carry, but like
that's
as
actually
it says, the game got away from him, and against this front, it's a really healthy average.
That's a really healthy average, especially when you consider he didn't have a explosive run. So that meant their median run had a high success rate. His longest run was 9 yards, which credit to the 49ers, but that meant you were getting movement and he was being decisive, cutting up field when he should, and then grinding out extra yards. I mean, that's kind of, you want this to be his floor, which is very attainable for him because the explosives will always be there, in time down the line. So,
well, his touchdown, he sort of managed to bounce that out, got it in for a few yards. Yeah. Like that was an explosive, albeit in the red zone.
Yeah, right. Right.
And the offensive line, they played pretty damn good. Like Gino was sacked 3 times, 25 yards, but that wasn't really on them. There was a false start, which ain't great. Obviously, we've covered 3 downfield penalties, which
yeah.
But I felt the offensive line did fine and blocked well. I mean, we will have. I can't speak today. I guess I'm tired, but yeah, we will have a tape review.
Bad defense caught your tongue.
Yeah, bad defense, and I don't have coffee because I have responsibilities. Saturday game. Coffee. What's that about? You do have coffee. You have the enhancing substance. Okay, some questions. Here we go. We will answer the sort of roster construction questions in the future. Although
we're going to do
roster construction ones, so let's delve into some.
We can do a little preview.
Feels like they need to upgrade Haynes Jackson. Yeah, it does. I think, as we said, Gabe Jackson. He was playing up until this game where Phil Haynes was actually inactive. It'd be interesting to see the snap counts, but up until this game, Gabe Jackson was always hovering around that 50% mark, splitting reps. He was like a part-time guard, which in the NFL is very uncommon. And the plays that he did play on, he struggled. Like he's not the same player. I don't think it would be hard to see a way that he can come back. And Haynes, it doesn't look like the answer. So you've definitely got to upgrade right guard. Yeah. Center Austin Blythe got hurt in this game, but then came back in late.
I feel like Blythe offers a lot of value on like the stuff you like doesn't stand out, and I feel like that actually like matters. And he had some, honestly, like a lot of his play you might say is just fine, but then he absolutely has breakdown drives, breakdown games against talent where it's just too much. That can be mitigated a little bit if the right guard play was as good as the left guard play, I think. Because I think Damian Lewis is really solid now in all phases. So I'm not like totally opposed outright at not replacing Blythe. But if there's like a really convenient way of doing so, someone becomes available in free agency who's decent, not too expensive, of which there always is a center that's fairly cheap that is good. Or, there's someone in the draft that is like, whatever, a good prospect, then okay, sure, why not? But it doesn't need to be like move heaven and earth to replace center. But I do think they should invest in right guard.
Yeah, and
Also, the thing is, if you draft a guy to play center, he's probably going to be worse than Blythe was this year, his rookie year. Year 2 could be really promising, but like Creed Humphrey just doesn't happen most years. Like year 1 centers are usually bad.
and with Blythe, the other part of that discussion is he is only on a 1-year deal. His deal expires this offseason, and he's 30 years old too. Maybe they do try and dip into the free agency deal, but yeah, I think intangibly, like smarts wise, I think he adds a lot that you don't necessarily see, or do see it. I also think he's a very easy target for stuff where it's not necessarily his fault. Like, and also few centers would have won in those situations. Like,
Right.
yeah. Okay, so what's the priority in the off season? Well, I think right guard, and then the defense is a difficult question to answer in some ways because, like, as we covered, the scheme stuff is a bit confusing, but and like what actual system they want to be, but just getting pass rush and disruption, like defensive tackle, and like if Jalen Carter, I haven't watched him properly, but if he was the one, then that would be big. Like they need
Yeah.
they
I
need
think
a guy who can play across the interior and play a bit on the outside shoulder of a tackle at times, like in underfronts, and can actually be disruptive would be huge.
I feel like the pass rush could use it anywhere. I don't think if an elite guy is there, I don't care if he plays defensive tackle or outside linebacker or edge. I don't care. Just they need some 3-down player that is serviceable against the run. That's an elite pass rusher, so that you can have him on the field on first down, and get pressure that way. As far as defensive tackle goes, I mean, they have big questions because Woods is going to be 36 years old, under contract, still a good player, but you can't play him a ton of snaps. And Brian Monet's out of the picture, unfortunately, for 2023 with his ACL tear. So they have a nose tackle question at 3 technique. I think Puna 4, is he going to be a free agent, Puna, or is he under contract for another year? Either way, the way I view defensive tackle
I think he's a tender.
Okay. The way I view defensive tackle is they have cap considerations. Like Shelby Harris, I think, again, is a decent player, but he's going to have a $9 million cap hit next year. They're not going to pay him that, no matter how
I know Puna
highly they view him. So he's probably
a free agent.
Yeah. So I feel like they just have regular rostering questions on the interior because their normal game plan there is day 3 draft and then veteran defensive tackle free agency, where they're paying guys $1 million. Like Puna 4 was an undrafted free agent. Al Woods, was originally signed in 2019 as their normal Ataba Rubin, Tony McDaniel signing. And he happens to be probably the best of those guys they've signed in the past. But I feel like they've earned the right to kind of have the same application. But like if Jalen Carter or there might be other guys in this draft that we're going to watch. If there's another guy that is there in the second round that they just think is a really good player, he can do it all, then okay, take him, But I don't think if they use their surplus resources from this draft and their cap structure, if they have to use a lot of that to shore up the run defense, then they've already lost, and they've already like undone the cool opportunity they have here. It needs to come along with the pass rush, or it needs to be like, circumstantial, like there wasn't anyone better at that draft slot or something. Because I don't want to see them like spam picks in the interior. I feel like if the coaching remains the same, I don't feel like that will even make much of a difference, because I still believe the run defense regression isn't personnel related, or at least it's like 70-30 coaching to personnel in terms of blame distribution. So I don't know.
John asked a great question. Way too early question. Does Hurt return to 2-4-5 next off season, especially the expansion of 2 back offenses as the season went on? Well, so the weird thing, John, is that they were basically so against 11 personnel, so 1 running back, 1 tight end, they were a 2-4-5 team. their play just got a bit better in that kind of look. And they also played more middle field closed, which kind of went hand in hand. So more cover three, a bit more cover one, but mainly cover three with the safety coming down to the tight end and the nickel going to the passing strength. So what Fangio calls cover nine. Now to 12 personnel and heavier, like 21 personnel, like the two back stuff you talk about. They played base 3-4 underlooks, under like weak rotated cover three with a sprinkling of like quarter half. So it's not really about returning to the 2-4-5 as it's more about I don't really know, man. Like is it about playing more too high coverages and shells and mixing up your shells more often on like neutral downs, like non-obvious pass, non-obvious run downs? Is it about that? Is it about techniques up front, trying to get back to playing more gap and a half style stuff? But the thing is, around the league, that's not that viable with the way offenses are playing teams now. Like if you look at other defensive struggles, they're not having that much fun, generally speaking, against the kind of problems that Seattle had when they try and do similar things. So,
like I don't know how you play that much 2-4-5 and not have line movement to try to fix. I mean, they did do some, but why isn't it more of a main feature? Last year, I mean, like the formula to defeating the run metas, which is still predominantly wide zone, under center wide zone with complementary gap scheme to target the C gap weakness. You play bear to shut down most zone concepts, and then you use fire zones, run blitzes essentially with line movement to shore up the problems presented by the gap scheme or a lead blocker in the zone concept.
And the play fakes off it because it pushes the linebackers away, like in more advantageous space to cover like the crossing routes.
Right. And you go like, well, why do you need to invest that much scheme into run defense? It's, well, I think we take good run defense for granted, how much has to go into it for that to occur. Because if you don't dedicate scheme to it, like this year, they did not dedicate that much scheme to it. That doesn't mean there can't be like overt coaching emphasis within your scheme. That can be the trick sometimes. But we didn't see, at least superficially, run-oriented scheming. And we saw how that matters against teams that run the ball well. They ran the ball extraordinarily well against Seattle this year because of it. So a lot of this, I feel like, goes down to scheme. So I don't know. It's bizarre to me.
Yeah. And
So yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So David asks a good follow-up question. Do you guys buy the story that only Vic Fangio has fielded a successful Fangio-style defense? I would argue that what Ken Norton Jr. was doing last year was his take on that very thing. And at least if we're just isolating it to defending the run well, I think that you absolutely can, because a Carroll assistant's already done it. I mean, the 2-4-5 thing is like, that exists in every Fangio assistant's playbook as well. Like it exists almost in every defensive coordinator's playbook. It's how you ebb and flow out of it, or what characterizes a particular defensive coordinator, particular staff's flavor is how much time they spend in what front, like how they apply the playbook. So you could argue that they're living really in a vein, the same world as they did last year. They're just applying they're applying different stuff, pushing levers, buttons differently, pulling levers differently. So it really just comes down to applying what you have, really.
Yeah.
Like they're all tools on a tool belt.
The early thing of being in 2-4-5 for more different personnel, like for heavier personnel too, and sort of trying to stick in it as much as possible, that felt like a Sean Desai thing, because Desai in Chicago did that loads. Like he, to the point that, as we've said, the Rashad Penny game where they're just sat in the same, like, too high 2-4-5. They're trying some different ways to cheat the math, but ultimately they get run on the whole game.
I mean, unambiguously, the front change this year we can source to Sean Desai. Now, to his influence, his suggestion. Now, Clint Hurtt is still the defensive coordinator. Pete Carroll is still the head coach, so they all deserve scrutiny. But we can still work out fairly cleanly where this came from.
And the defense to also look at for the 2-4-5 stuff actually really working was in Denver with Fangio in 2021, where they ran a lot of cover 1 and 2-4-5.
Right. That's another good point. They don't quite have the guys to run cover 1 to that extent yet. Maybe another year from Woolen and Kobe.
Because what cover 1 allows you to do is you can have your linebackers play pretty hard against the run and sort of play face forward in a way that doesn't quite work in cover 3 because they would be responsible for some more of the crosses and stuff like that. You agree, Griff?
Yeah, no, I do agree. Yeah.
Anyway, so I haven't muted myself. That's all good. So I guess just to put a bow on things, it's important to have perspective with the whole team because they went 9-8. A lot of people said they wouldn't. I said they go 10-7, for instance. But no, a lot of people were down in the team. And when Geno Smith was announced as a starter, that did surprise people. If after the trade of Russell Wilson, I didn't think they'd go 10-7. I didn't, because the quarterback situation was very hairy, and I hadn't seen Geno play like he did in the preseason. And I hadn't had the faith that you, Griff, had in his process earlier. And I hadn't gone through and looked at the all-22 because I was sort of trying to bury my head in the sand. But then I came to the realization, like you did, that Geno would be good. But anyway, the perspective is, they had some crucial injuries to their defense. There's also a lot of young guys on the defense. They'll have learned a lot. They've built a core. Pete Carroll said last week how they've got all the right ingredients culture-wise, and he's been around other winning teams where he's had similar stuff. So there's clearly a big belief among the team. Not only did they go and make the playoffs, not only did they compete for a half against a very talented 49ers team before their collapse, but Denver's pick, we covered Russell Wilson's struggles in great detail on this podcast in Seattle, and we sort of talked about the trade and how, we felt he was going down a bit, although we did not predict as big a slide as this. And also we didn't predict Denver to be as much of a car, or we didn't, I guess we never actually talked about how much of a car crash it could be, but I think the 5th overall pick is a pretty damn good. So you'd have taken that at the start of the season. You'd have been like, wow, it was that bad. So a great 2022 season for Seattle, despite how disappointing today was. This is only just the start of this team cycle, as funny as that is, with Pete Carroll being 71 now. And we're
not gone anywhere.
He's not good. Why would he? And we're just getting ramped up. We have so much stuff we can talk about. We've got the draft. We'll have a season review, maybe a data review from the season, and then a tape review from the season, just sort of highlighting key topics. Yeah. Then draft content. Griff's already been a maniac and watched loads of the players. I need to get on his maniac level and delve into the Jalen Carters, the Will Andersons. I've watched Gonzalez because Griff implored me to watch him. And also, obviously, not just the glitzier names, but the day 2, the day 3 guys. It doesn't stop. So we won't be going anywhere. We'll still keep it 3 times a week, I think, until the off season. So
yeah, we'll see.
Keep the well, you can't really keep the faith because the team is gone. But
keep the cope.
Keep the cope. 31-7 is going to hit at some point.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks for the great questions. Thanks for the kind donations. Thank you also to Brendan Mullally, he gave a super thanks donation, which you can also do if you will like our stuff. He gave that, I think it was yesterday. So thank you very much for that. Thanks to your continued support, Brendan. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Great discussion. Like the video, subscribe to the video, follow Griffin at CMikeSpinMove, follow me at Matty F. Brown, follow at Seattle Overload. Also, download the podcast if you're listening as well. Give us a 5-star review. We appreciate you. The 2022 Seahawks are over, but now the 22... but now I go to bed. No, but now the 2023 Seahawks are getting started, and we'll also be able to react to Pete Carroll's end of season press conference, which will have a few revealing nuggets as it tends to.
Yeah, it's not Genover, it's just be Genoing.
Wow, very good, Griff. How long did you spend on that one?
That one just came to me. Improv. And
you're talented.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Great. All right. Bye, guys. Oh, Alex,